Today's question: why is Israel attacking Iran? I am a US Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so we've been seeing an uptick in the fighting between Israel and Iran. Now, there are two arenas where this takes place. One is within Syria itself, and the other is, of course, in Iraq and in particular Karbala. So why is Israel doing this? What are they getting out of it? And what is their objective here? So I want to break this down into a few different parts. The first part is kind of the basics of the situation on the ground. The second is talking about some of the things that Israel is trying to accomplish. And then lastly, we'll talk about whether or not I think it's effective and how the US is involved as well. So first, let us talk about the situation on the ground, because I do think that it is important to understand that when we're talking about Israel striking targets inside Syria, those targets are almost always Iranian proxies like Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Hezbollah. They're going after these groups, and these groups are carrying out attacks against Israel from within Syria. So that's sort of the first thing to know, that these aren't Iranian regime targets per se, but rather the Iranian regime's proxies. Now, as we saw with the recent attack in Karbala though, this is a little bit different. This is a more direct attack by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC for short. And what happened was basically these militiamen, which were armed and trained by the IRGC, attacked an Israeli-owned or Israeli-operated oil facility in Iraq. And you can see here, I've got a map from Al Jazeera. It says the Kurdistan region of Iraq. This is a semi-autonomous region of Iraq that has its own government and its own military forces. But this oil refinery that was attacked is actually owned by a company called Delta, which is Israeli-based. So that's no one, is that this is a new escalation. We've seen more direct involvement by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The second thing to keep in mind is that this is all happening in the context of the ongoing Syrian civil war. So if you take a look at this, you can see that much of Syria, including its major cities like Aleppo, Damascus, are still under the control of Bashar al-Assad's regime, which of course is backed by both Russia and Iran. There's been a lot of fighting. Hundreds of thousands of people have died. A lot of people have also fled, become refugees, and really it's just a quagmire. And this is the environment where Iran is operating. And really what Iran is doing is they re-establishing a permanent base from which to launch attacks against Israel. So that's the second thing to keep in mind, is that they're doing this in the context of the Syrian civil war. And then the last thing to keep in mind is that while Israel has carried out airstrikes against Iran's proxies and the Iranian regime itself inside of Syria, most of these attacks go unknown. Like, it's very rare that Israel will say, yes, we carried out an attack on this target. In fact, they're trying to hide them. This is classified activity. So you've got a bunch of reports from media organizations or even US officials saying that Israel carried out airstrikes on such and such date. But rarely does Israel ever confirm or deny these types of reports. And this is intentional because they don't want to tip their hand. They don't want Iran to know when and where they're going to strike next. And they do want to alert any other potential enemies that they might be operating in the area. So again, most of these go unknown. Sometimes they get known through media reports or intelligence leaks or just open source reporting, meaning the photos and videos that come out after the fact. But most of these go unknown. So that's the third point to keep in mind. Okay, so that's the situation on the ground. That's what we're dealing with right now. Israel is striking Iranian targets inside of Syria. Those targets are mostly Iranian proxies, but occasionally they will strike Iranian targets as well. So what are they trying to accomplish? Well, I would say there's four main things. First, they're trying to push Iran back away from the Golan Heights. So this is the mountainous border region between Syria and Israel. The concern is that if Iran gets too close, within striking distance of the Golan Heights, then they could launch attacks against Israel. Again, one of the reasons that Israel wants to maintain freedom of movement in this region is because if they ever need to move forces quickly, they want to be able to do that. They don't want to have to worry about Iranian troops positioned on their border. So this is part of the reason why Israel is pushing Iran back. Second is to disrupt Iranian supply lines. So Iran is supplying its various proxies, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, etc. They resupplying them with weapons and ammunition and funding and anything else they need to carry out attacks against Israel. So if Israel can disrupt these supply lines, then they going to make it harder for Iran to build up its forces inside Syria and use those forces to launch attacks against Israel. Third is to degrade Iran's ability to project power. So essentially, Iran wants to turn Syria into a second Lebanon, a place where they can permanently station troops and launch attacks against Israel. If they can do that, then they have a permanent beachhead from which to launch attacks against Israel. Israel obviously can't allow this to happen. So one of the things they're trying to do is degrade Iran's ability to operate inside of Syria. And fourth, and probably most importantly, is to send a message to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. And what they're saying is, if you continue to push us, if you continue to provoke us, if you continue to support your proxies, if you continue to try to destroy the state of Israel, then we're going to continue to hit you. And we're going to hit you in ways and places that you won't expect. Okay, we're really going to use all of the tools at our disposal to make sure that you feel the pain of your decision to support your proxies and to try to destroy the state of Israel. So that's what Israel is trying to do with these airstrikes. It's unclear how effective they've been. My sense is that Iran has not really changed its behavior all that much. You continue to see rockets launched from Syria into Israel. You continue to see attacks carried out against Israeli assets inside Syria. You saw recently this attack carried out against the Israeli-owned oil refinery inside of Iraq. So it's unclear how effective these strikes have really been. That said, I think that the risk here for Iran is that if they escalate, if they decide to launch more attacks against Israel, if they decide to cross a red line, then they're going to face a much more robust response. Right now, Israel is operating in a way that sends a message to Iran, but it doesn't really put Iran at much risk. If Iran continues to escalate, if it crosses a red line, then Israel could launch a much more robust response that puts Iran's regime at serious risk. We talked about this in a previous video, I think it was last week, is that, Israel has carried out a number of sabotage attacks against Iran's nuclear program. And in each of these cases, they've stopped short of actually eliminating the Iranian nuclear threat. When they've struck Iran's nuclear facilities, they've done damage. They've set them back. But they haven't completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program. And the reason is because if they did that, if they were to destroy Iran's nuclear program, then Iran would likely retaliate. And that retaliation would put the entire political dynamic of the region at risk. So Israel, what Israel is trying to do, what Israel has tried to do since the founding of the nation of Israel, is find this sort of optimal level of violence. How much violence can they use against Iran or against Iran's proxies without causing Iran to overreact? And if they can find this level, then they can inflict maximum damage on Iran's nuclear program or on Iran's proxies without causing the entire political dynamic of the region to collapse. That's what Israel's trying to do. And this is where the US comes in, because the US has interests in this as well. And the US has been working closely with Israel to achieve the same objectives. So the US wants to help Israel degrade Iran's ability to project power. The US wants to help Israel degrade Iran's ability to supply its proxies. The US wants to help Israel send a message to Iran as supreme leader that it is unacceptable to support these proxies and to attack Israelis or Israeli assets. And so the US and Israel have pretty much the same objectives. And the way that the US goes about achieving these objectives is twofold. One, intel sharing. The US has significant intel capabilities in the region, and they share that intel with Israel. So that helps Israel make sure that they're retargeting the right things and that they're redoing so at the right time. The second thing is diplomatic pressure. The US works diplomatically, politically, to isolate Iran and to apply pressure on Iran and to convince Iran that it is in their best interest to stop supporting their proxies and to stop their nuclear weapons program. Okay? So hopefully that answers the question. Hopefully it gives you a better sense of why Israel is attacking Iran inside of Syria and in other places as well. If you've got questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks to our supporters. You guys make these videos possible. I'll see you in the next one.